If you walk over here with me, you can see where the bullets actually entered the building here through this glass panel. You can see 2 bullet holes in that glass panel. That freeway is plowed. Residential roads here are not. You can see over here, this might look like snow, but it really is ice already. You can see those chunks of ice coming out. A suspect vehicle crashed into that signpost over there at the Jack in the Box drive-through. That vehicle has been there all day. You can see this is still an active crime scene. You can also see over here on the grass where that vehicle and the suspect came onto the sidewalk, and over here up near the trailhead, there's still caution tape where it was cut down. You can still see the remnants of that. You know, one thing authorities are saying is if you're going to come hike these trails, come prepared. You know, the major change to House Bill 2002 has to do with a minor under 15 is right to an abortion. Everyone's gone home. You know, it's just me and the security guards left here in this building. They wrapped up about an hour ago, and both House and Senate. 60% of Oregon's 10,000 firefighters are volunteers. That means 6,000 people like Craig are doing this job unpaid. In rural areas like this, they may be the only ones answering your call for dozens of miles. But the number of volunteers is going down. Nationally, over the last 40 years, it's decreased 24%. But the number of calls has tripled. For years, Oregon's Volunteer Firefighter Association has been working to get some bills passed that would help incentivize volunteers like Craig. But after over a decade, very few of those have made it through. Let's go in and find out why. Crews going out to make sure people are safe in this weather. We went out with those crews today and watched their outreach efforts to make sure people are getting to warming shelters as these temperatures drop. Unusually cold temperatures, snow, and ice in Salem are rare and dangerous events for those sleeping outdoors. Robert Marshall and Lindsay Bigelow are driving around the city to try and get people into warming shelters.
Do you know there's the warming shelter open at First Presbyterian tonight?
Marshall says even if people don't accept help, that contact is important.
They're just about building that rapport, letting people know that a warming shelter is open, and also just greeting them with a smiling face. You know, like they're freezing cold, and you know they're lacking a support system, and they're lacking friends or family that are out here with them. And you know, for Lindsay and I and for the rest of the team that are out here doing this, it's really just reminding people that just because you're unsheltered doesn't mean you're not loved.
That is exactly what we watched the team do during a ride along.
Go to a warming shelter tonight, Ruby. Okay. I care about you, okay?
The warming shelters are accepting volunteers during this storm. Marshall says volunteering during a storm just like this one is how he came to do this work.
For me, it was a life-changing experience because these folks were coming in and they were soaking wet and they were freezing cold, but a lot of them were saying please and a lot of them were saying thank you, and they were coming in and they were saying goodnight.
Nancy and her kids recently escaped domestic violence. The name is an alias, and we've also distorted her voice, and we're not showing her face for safety reasons.
I was basically in a situation where the state was like, you need to find a new place to live and start over, or we're going to have to take different measures.
She decided to fight to keep the state from taking custody of her kids.
Being in this new city and this new school district with better services available and not nearly as many people, my kids are thriving. I'm thriving.
It was worth it, but not easy. She had to give up working to take care of her kids and reclaim her life. The state advised her to take Safe Leave, a paid leave Oregon program designed to help survivors like her. Her claim has been delayed for over 2 months. When she calls, she has to wait on hold twice to reach the right department.
When you call and say, well, is there a direct number I can have so that I don't have to wait on hold for an hour and I can just get directly to the Safe Leave department so that I'm not waiting on hold for you, and then you transfer me and I wait in their queue for another half an hour. And they tell me that I'm wrong, that there is a prompt for Safe Leave if I just listen to the prompts, like as if I'm not listening.
I listened to the prompts with her. There's no option for Safe Leave.
No, we're pretty sure there's a prompt. And like, I'm pretty sure I just called you and I listened to the prompts, and that's not how it sounds. So it's very, almost like gaslighting.
I took these concerns to Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. Is this an issue that you've been following as head of the state, and what are you going to do about it?
Yes, it is an issue I'm following. First of all, the Paid Leave Oregon program is off to a strong start, and it's really important for families. And I'm not satisfied that we are meeting the needs of all of our families right now.
In September, I obtained records showing hundreds of preschool promise lots for children from low-income families remained open. My investigation found that from 2020 to 2022, the program spent almost $43 million to cover about 3,800 preschool spots statewide. 26 million taxpayer dollars were spent on preschool slots that were never filled. The state agency's director, Alyssa Chatterjee, says it's because of the pandemic.
We approached the 2021 and 21-22 program year with the pandemic lens. So we were not in the practice of clawing money back from providers. We were focusing on stabilizing the limited availability of care.
That means preschools still got to keep the money, even if in some cases they had 0 preschool promise students. I wanted to know how they spent that money, so I obtained their expense reports. Some grantees had some questionable spending habits. For example, one Portland preschool claimed $8,000 one month for rent, $4,000 the next. Looked up the property tax records, the same name of the person who owns the daycare. She bought the home in 2000 for $200,000. How is this costing her $4,000 to $8,000 a month in rent, and why isn't this being looked at? These are taxpayer dollars.
I'd have to look at the grantee. It's also important to note that many child care providers don't operate in their homes.
Are these grantees required to submit any receipts for their spending?
At this time, no, and that's one of the advantages that we have as we create this new grants management system is we'll have a much more centralized and robust way to take in information.
So in this new data reporting system, are there going to be receipts required for their spending?
It will all depend on what the system can fully do. We're still in the process of procuring and developing that system.
So I guess that's part of what I'm not understanding here. I mean, if I go on a work trip, I go out to dinner, I expense that, I need to submit a receipt. That's pretty much true for every taxpayer in America. So why is that not true for people we're giving millions of dollars to?
It varies depending on the funding stream when you're talking about public funds. So when we think about what schools are required to report in order to receive money from the Department of Education, the state school fund, it is not going to be necessarily a receipt for everything.
What started off as a routine Saturday morning bingo game ended with gunshots and one man killed in an officer-involved shooting. Steve Daxtra, bingo manager at this American Legion, tells us around 40 players witnessed the shooting.
We had a guy come running into the building and looked like he was trying to get out.
Kitchen staff say the suspect came into the bingo hall from the back door.
2 of my employees were out having a cigarette, and he confronted them, and then he come into the building.
What did he say to them?
I don't want to hurt anybody.
Authorities say this all started in this neighborhood this morning at 10:40 a.m. They got a call from a victim saying they had their van stolen by a suspect who was armed with a handgun. Just before 11 in this Goodwill parking lot, another attempted carjacking. Clark County sheriffs saying the victim told them someone was in the car at the time. They were able to get away. Then just half an hour later, officers spotted that first stolen van here in the parking lot of the American Legion. Now, that's just across the street from the Goodwill.
Deputies observed the male suspect enter the American Legion. That happened around 11:32 a.m. Shortly thereafter, deputies contacted the suspect inside American Legion where an officer-involved shooting took place.
He wasn't able to provide a lot of details about that shooting. How many shots were fired from officers?
No idea.
And so you said you don't know if there was an exchange of fire. Did the person have a handgun at the time?
Like I said, we believe it was the same armed suspect who we know had a handgun from the previous incident.